Hello everyone, and this video will be going over equations of lines. Focus on that one. There we go. Okay, so to get started, first thing we're going to do, we have to remember that y is equal to mx plus b, where the m is your slope and the b is your y-intercept. Which will be 0b. So when x is equal to 0, y is equal to whatever that b value is. Okay, and this is called your slope intercept form. Okay. So far, we know that our slope formula, which is m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, this is only useful if we know our x1, y1 and x2, y2. Okay, that's the only way we can use that slope formula. Okay, but what if we only know one point? Okay, so if we only know our x1, y1, then that slope will become a little bit different. So instead of y2, since we don't know y2, that just remains y. So y minus our y1 over x minus x1, since we no longer know our x2. We just leave it as x, unknown. So what if we multiply both sides of the equal sign by the denominator? Okay, that will give us x minus x1 times m equals y minus y1 over x minus x1 times x minus x1. Okay, so all we did was just multiply both sides of the denominator, both sides of the equal sign by x minus x1. Okay, so these two will cancel each other out. So we will have y minus y1 is equal to m times x minus x1. And I'm just going to go ahead and switch those around. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Now, if you wanted to, you could add y1 to both sides. So it would be y equals y1 plus m times x minus x1. Okay, but normally the first one is the one that's used most often. And this is your point slope formula. All right. Okay, so let's go to our first example. Yep. Okay, so let's say we want to find an equation of the line with a slope of -1 and y-intercept of 0, -3. And we want to write it in slope-intercept form. Alright, so this problem is an example of not having to use the point-slope formula. Okay, and I'll show you why you don't have to use the point-slope formula. If you look at what's given to us in this problem, okay, we know the slope is equal to -1. And we know the y-intercept is 0, negative 3. Okay, now remember, the y-intercept is 0, b. So by the y-intercept being 0, negative 3, it means that b is equal to negative 3, and the slope is equal to negative 1, shows us that m is equal to negative 1. Okay, so we have our slope and we have our y-intercept. So if they give you the slope and y-intercept, you just plug that into the y-intercept formula. So you have y equals mx plus b, or the slope-intercept formula. So you have y equals negative 1, since your m is equal to negative 1, x plus your b is negative 3, so you can just put that right there. Okay, so if we go ahead and simplify this up a little bit, you have y equals negative 1 times x is negative x. Plus negative 3, we can just make that minus 3. Okay, so that's your answer right there. All right. So again, that's when you don't need to worry about the point slope formula. Okay. Now, every example after this, you will need most of the examples after this, you will need the point slope formula. Okay, so let's say for our next example, you want to find an equation of the line with a slope negative 2 that passes through the point negative 1, 5. And write the equation in slope-intercept and standard form. Okay, now slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. And standard form is just when all of your variables are on one side, so it's ax plus by equals c, where a, b, and c are just numbers. They could be fractions, whole numbers, usually whole numbers. All right, so first we do just what we did before. We see what's given to us. Okay, now on this one, we see that the slope equals negative 2, which means that m is equal to negative 2. And we see that we're given a point, which is negative 1, 5. Okay, those are the two things given to us. So whenever we're given a point and a slope, we're going to use the point slope formula because we have a point and a slope. Okay, so that's y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Okay, so whenever we're given our point, that's your x1 and your y1. Okay, remember your x1, y1 are just your known xy values. Okay, so if we go ahead and plug in everything we know, so we have y minus y1, so y minus 5 equals m, and is negative 2, times x minus x1, so x minus, and your x1 is negative 1, x minus negative 1. Okay, so if we go ahead and clean this up a little bit, you have y minus 5 equals negative 2, x minus negative is just x plus 1. Okay, so now we solve for y, so the first thing we do, get rid of those parentheses by distributing the negative 2. You have y minus 5 equals negative 2 times x, negative 2x, and negative 2 times positive 1 is minus 2. Okay, now we get the y by itself by adding the 5 to both sides. So we have y equals negative 2x And -2 plus 5 is plus 3. Okay, so this is our slope intercept answer. Okay, so now we look at our standard form. Okay, so we started off with y equals -2x plus 3. So we add 2x to both sides, and that gives us 2x plus y equals 3. And this is our standard form. Okay, so basically you just get one answer from the other. Okay, normally on each problem they'll only ask for one. They very rarely ask for both slope intercept and standard form. All right. So let's go to our next example. Okay, and what I want you to do is try this one on your own. Okay, so we're going to find an equation of a line with a slope of 5 and through the point -7, -10. Okay, and you're going to write your equation in slope intercept and standard form. Okay, so go ahead and press pause and write this one on your own using the same process from the previous example. All right, so I'm assuming that you have pressed pause and worked this one out. Okay, so starting off, we're going to do the same thing we did before. Okay, we're going to see what's given. So we're given a slope is 5. So that lets us know that our m is going to equal 5. And we're given the point -7, -10. And that lets us know our x1, y1. Okay, so we have our point and our slope. So we're going to use the point slope formula. Alright, so we have our y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So we're going to go ahead and plug in everything we know. So we have our y minus y1, which is -10. Straighten that out a little bit. There we go. Equals your m, which is 5, times x minus x1. So that's x minus -7. That's your x1. So we're going to go ahead and clean this up a little bit, make those minus negatives into pluses. So we have y plus 10 equals 5 times x plus 7. Okay, so now we can go ahead and solve for y. We're going to go ahead and distribute that 5. So y plus 10 equals 5 times x plus 5 times 7, which is 35. So if we go ahead and subtract 10 from both sides, that gives us y equals 5x plus 25. And that's our slope intercept answer. Now to get our standard form, y equals 5x plus 25. We subtract 5x from both sides. That gives us -5x plus y equals 25. Okay, now this one could be your standard form answer, but in a lot of textbooks and online homework problems, they want that very first term to be positive. So we're going to divide every term by -1 or multiply each term by -1. So you would have 5x minus y equals -25. Okay. So either one of those would work as your standard form. Okay. So I didn't want you to see in a textbook where you think this is correct, but they have this one, you're trying to figure out why. All they did was make this very first term a positive whole number. Okay, but you're not incorrect. All right, so let's go to our next example. Okay, so what if they want you to find an equation and you only have 2 points? Okay, so in other words, they didn't give you a slope. All right, so I'll show you how to do that one. Okay, so for example, let's say you want to find an equation through the points 2, 5 and -3, 4. And you want to write it in slope, intercept, and standard form. Okay, so just like before, we're going to write down what's given to us, which in this case are the 2 points 2, 5 and -3, 4. Okay, so whenever you're given just 2 points, the first thing you want to do, use the 2 points to find your slope. Use 2 points to find your slope. Okay, so we know that our slope formula is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Okay, so we can go ahead and identify this as x1, y1, and x2, y2. Now, even though you can use either one for your x1, y1, and x2, y2, in most books and programs, you'll see that the very first one will be the x1, y1, and x2, y2. So if you plug in this one as your x1, y1, you would get a different answer than probably what's in the textbook or the answer that they give. So usually it's the first one that's your x1, y1. Okay, so if we have our y2 minus y1, that's 4 minus 5 over x2 minus x1, so that's -3 minus 2. Okay, so 4 minus 5 is -1. -3 minus 2 is -5. Negative divided by negative is positive, so that's 1 over 5. So that lets us know that our slope is 1 over 5. Okay, now your second step, you're going to use your m equals 1 over 5 and your x1, y1. Remember, that's your x1, y1. To plug into the point slope formula. Okay, so remember, first thing you have to do, find your slope. Once you do that, you have your slope and your x1, y1, and you plug it in, just like we did before. Okay, so y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So if we plug in what we know, y minus y1, so that's y minus 5, equals m, so we have 1 over 5, times x minus x1, which is 2. So if we go ahead and distribute that 1 over 5, we have y minus 5 equals 1 over 5x minus 2 over 5, since 1 over 5 times 2. Okay, so if we go ahead and add 5 to both sides, where those two cancel out, we have 5 minus 2 over 5. So 5, you can make that 5 over 1 minus 2 over 5. And since we could only subtract when our denominators are the same, move this over a little bit. We can just multiply this by 5 over 5, because 5 times 1 will give us the same 5 in that denominator. Okay, so 5 times 5 is 25 over 5 times 1, which is 5, minus 2 over 5. Our denominators are the same, so our answer will be over 5. So we subtract our numerator, which is 25 minus 2, which is 23. All right, so that gives us the answer y equals 1 over 5x minus 23 over 5. Okay, so this is our slope intercept answer. Okay, so we're running out of space, so we're going to write our standard form on another sheet. So if you're still writing, feel free to press pause. Okay, so there we go. Okay, so we left off with y equals 1 over 5x plus 23 over 5. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to get rid of these fractions. We're going to multiply each term by 5. Alright, so that gives us 5 times y equals 5 times 1 over 5x plus 5 times 23 over 5. Okay, basically we multiply it by our least common denominator. Okay, so that means these two cancel out and those two 5s cancel out. So we are left with 5y equals 1 times x, which is just x, plus 23. Okay, so if we subtract x from both sides, we have negative x plus 5y equals 23. Okay, remember, they usually want that first term to be a positive whole number. So we're going to go ahead and divide each term by -1 or multiply by -1. Doesn't matter. So x minus 5y equals -23 as your standard form. Okay. Like I said, remember they usually ask for one or the other. They very rarely ask for both standard and slope intercept. All right. So let's go to our next example. And I want you to try this one. So we want to find an equation for the line through 4, -1 and -1, -4. And you're going to write it in just slope-intercept form. Okay, we're not going to worry about the standard form for this one. All right, so go ahead and press pause and do this one. All right, so assuming that you've pressed pause and worked this one out already, we write down what's given. Okay, so we're given our 2 points, which is 4, -1, and -1, -4. Remember, that's our x1, y1, and our x2, y2. So that means we can find the slope. Okay, so slope is equal to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So that will be -4 minus -1 over -1 minus 4. Okay, so that minus negatives will give us plus, so -4 plus 1, -3 over -1 minus 4 is -5, which is 3 over 5. So we know that our m is 3 over 5. Second, you're going to plug in your m equals 3 over 5 and your x1, y1 into your point slope formula. Okay, so we have our y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Okay, so plug in everything we know. We have y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1, so that's x minus 4. And if we go ahead and simplify that a little bit, so that will end up being y plus 1 equals 3 over 5 times x minus 4. So we go ahead and distribute that 3 over 5. We have y plus 1 equals 3 over 5x minus, okay, so 3 over 5 times 4, so we have 3 over 5 times 4 over 1. 3 times 4 is 12. 5 times 1 is 5, so that's 12 over 5. So if we subtract 1 from both sides, those two cancel out. So we're left with y equals 3 over 5x. So if we have negative 12 over 5 minus 1, we can rewrite that as negative 12 over 5 minus 5 over 5. Our denominators match, so that answer will be over 5. So we have negative 12 minus 5 is negative 17. So it would be minus 17 over 5. Okay, and that's our slope intercept answer. Okay, so hopefully this has made sense, and I will see you on the next video.